Okay, Claire, what is tip number 4, please?
So this is more about checking for understanding. This is after the lesson. So after the lesson, you're going to look at their books, and maybe in maths they ticked as they go. They've, like in maths, I think it works really well when they do 4 and then check with either check because you give them the answer. For independent work, they might check and then you give them the answers, or check and when with a group. I love this when you check with a group. Have you all got the same answer? Probably it's right then, because you probably haven't all made the same mistake, probably. But if there's a difference in the group, then let's work out who's got it wrong. And maybe it's the 3 have got it wrong and the 1's got it right. Anyway, so that's a by the by, sorry. So that's really from the previous one. But so when you check their work afterwards, then again, you need to do something about it. You're just going to go, oh God, they couldn't do that. Never mind. Next week it's area cracking on, or Macbeth or whatever. So what do you do? So what you don't do most of the time is marking, because and why don't you do that? And it's not really even about workload. It's a bit about workload, but actually it's because it's not very effective. When I was learning to drive, I wasn't very good at parallel parking. Now, what my driving instructor didn't do was then go, how am I going to help you with your parallel parking? And there was only one of me, of course. She wasn't trying to teach 30 people all at once to parallel park. But what she didn't do is go, I'm going to write you a little mini essay here explaining how to parallel park. And then I would read it and go, oh, right, that's what I should be doing. It's really unlikely to be helpful, isn't it? Why is writing an explanation? Why don't you just tell them the explanation? And as we know, most of the time, the problems are pretty similar that kids are coming into. So when children can't do something, and most of the time when they try and do something, if they haven't done it, it's not because they're being perverse. If they haven't done it, it's because they don't know how to. So they don't need feedback. They do not need feedback. What they need is more teaching. That's what they need. So you do a lesson and you think, oh, blimey, they can't do whatever. Then what do you do next lesson? Or, a third of them can't do that. Well, we're going to do that again then. Not necessarily for the whole lesson, but we are going to do some of the lesson doing some of it, rather than just thinking, I know, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write it down for Craig, and I'm going to write it down again for Alison. I'm going to write it down again for Abel, and I'm going to write something else. That's crazy. To get workload, it's just really ineffective. It's also really bad on workload as well. And that's important, not just because it's nice to be nice to teachers, of course it is, but it's like if you're, all choices have opportunity costs. If you're spending your time marking, you're not thinking about misconceptions. You're not thinking about how you can be super clear. You're not thinking about how you're going to check for understanding of the lesson or what you're going to do if they can't do something. And that's be a much better use of your time than spending ages marking work. So, if they can't do something, they don't need feedback, they need teaching. Most of the time. There's a place for some sort of feedback, but, it has to be within their power to act on it. So, I don't know if you've had this, but, when you had to give them the next step of the target, and the target is learn something I haven't taught you yet. Well, it's not in their power to do anything about, is it? So that's pointless. So it's much better to go, your feedback is, do you know what? If you did your homework, that might help. Or, maybe you should sleep some more or come to school on time. Those sort of things are in their power. I know it's not in all kids' power. I get that. Some kids have super challenges in their lives. But, for most kids, there are things they can actually do. Maybe if you learnt your tables, you'd find maths a lot easier. Just saying. So give them, if you're giving them feedback, it's got to be, it's not on what you've just taught them generally, because there's not much, that's for you. The feedback, when you look at their books, is for you as a teacher. So when it's called AFL, and Assessment for Learning? Yeah, well actually a lot of it isn't assessment for learning, it's assessment for teaching. So, but there is assessment for learning, and actually it is useful to say things like, your table knowledge is really getting in the way here. That could really help you, so let's do something about that. It is really useful to give them metacognitive strategies to check their work. So, for example, and these will be, I'm not talking about Key Stage 4 here, but, like if you add some numbers together, you can add them up in a different order to check, because it should be the same answer. Ta-da! The quick checking mechanism to check your own work. You can use the inverse to check. So, do your work and then check it, and have those sort of routines that you are going to check. If you're doing long multiplication, what's the thing that everyone forgets when they do long multiplication? Oh, they forget the 0 in the second line, or the 2 zeros in the third line, or whatever. Like, what's the thing that everyone does? Oh, yeah, check that. And this will be, you'll like this one for Key Stage 4. Key Stage 5, any key stage, this is a thing. Units. Is this a measures question? Yes. Has it got units in? Yes. Might the examiner, tester, whoever has set the question have, deliberately mixed up meters and kilometers? Probably, because they're just like that. They want to check. I'm going to check forensically the units. I will just do that. Whenever it says units, I will go through a question and I'll put a big, I have a code to myself. I'll do a big pink circle or something round it, and that will remind me that when I check, it's like, there's a units question. I'm likely to make a mistake with this. Integration.
Right. Okay.
Add the 0. I will make that mistake. As soon as I read integration, I'll put a big sign to myself. Not add 0, add C, sorry, whatever it is. What do you do with integration? Add C.
Yeah,
whatever it is. The
one.
thing that you don't do that everyone forgets to do. So, teaching them self-checking mechanisms, fine. That works. So a bit of metacognitive feedback, but feedback is really for you, not for them.
I like it. I like a controversial one, Claire, and I like this. Forget the feedback, do the reteaching if they don't know. I like this. So let's dig into this a little bit more. So the first thing to say is I've made this mistake many a time, where I've had a big pile of books on a Sunday, and I'm having to mark them, and I the first book gets a load of my attention, loads of written feedback, blah, blah, blah. Second book, slightly less attention because I'm getting knackered now. Third book, so on. And then what will happen, by the time we get to like the 15th book, not only can I not be bothered anymore, but also I've spotted the same mistake again and again and again. And if I'd have known that from the start, I wouldn't have bothered writing all this feedback, because it would have signalled that this is a whole class issue. So no point writing in the individual books. Let's just, reteach it. So I think one thing that I've certainly found useful was having a quick flick through all the books first, just in case you can identify a bit of a common trend before you start diving in forensically one book at a time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's absolutely key. And, if you get some outlier who's done something really bizarre, fine, Yeah, still maybe writing isn't going to be the thing. It might be. It's not like it's banned forever and a day. But, like, as your go-to strategy, it's a really weak strategy.
I agree. Right, let me ask you an awkward question about this then. So I always like to kind of play devil's advocate a bit on this show. So let's go awkward. So what you're kind of hoping for when you mark is either everybody's got it right, because then you're laughing, or everybody's got it wrong in the same way, because then you can do your whole class feedback.
Yeah.
But let's take the extreme scenario. Let's imagine half the class have got it right, half the class have got a question wrong. What are you going to do there? Because if you teach the whole class it again, it feels like you're a bit of a disservice to the ones who know it. But then if you just try and teach a small section, what on earth are the rest of the class going to do? How does that play out?
Well, I think you can go either way, and I don't say it's not a problem, but I think people overdo it as a problem, and I think that actually overlearning is really good. So it's not going to kill the half who got it right to sit through it again. It really isn't. It's like, oh, good for you, and actually, this is going to help you. And I read this ages ago, and I've tried, when you read something, you think, oh, where was that? And I've tried to find it and haven't been able to find it. That's really annoying. But it was this paper about A-level maths. And, typically the jump from GCSE to A-level maths is quite a shock to the system for kids. And what they found, you've got these high-flying kids who've got all their grades, whatever, 7 pluses, whatever. But actually, their understanding of things like fractions or algebra or whatever isn't as secure as you think, because they've been able to do stuff and they've been stretched and challenged and pushed on to the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one, and actually you've done them a misservice, because they can do a few, so they're fine, and they don't really, they've got a superficial understanding, they've got a really depth understanding of it, and actually they could have done better had they really been we've done them to death. We've made sure they really, 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 really had a secure understanding. So that overlearning actually will probably really benefit them. So it isn't the terrible thing. Though, there might be occasions, there might be some kids that's like, no, really, 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 they do get it. They really do get it. And I don't think, there are strategies you can use. You can be like, if you got it, if you really, really, really got it, here's another one to be getting on with, Here's something you can be practicing. I'm going to be talking to everyone else. You're going to be dead quiet. I'm not going to help you. So this is for most people, but if you really think you've really got this, fine. Here you are, crack on with this. So.
Got it.